Good afternoon, buenas tardes. My name is Nick. Welcome to the Prince George's County Memorial Library System's virtual programs. We're so grateful that you have taken some time out of your day to join us to learn about some amazing resources and another one of our wonderful community leaders here in Prince George's County. Again, my name is Nick. I'm the COO for Communication and Outreach at the library, and I am filling in for our regular host, Roberta Phillips, the CEO today, who was off visiting the new library in Annapolis, which is super exciting for Anne Arundel County. We are very grateful to have with us a very special guest who is a dear colleague of ours and who is behind the scenes in the county working to make sure that many Prince Georgians get the resources that they need to thrive and succeed as citizens. Her name is Katina Rojas Joy. She is the Latino Liaison in the Office of the County Executive, serving under County Executive Angela Alsobrooks here in Prince George's County. Welcome, Katina. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Nick. Hola a todos.
Awesome. So I'm just going to share a bit about Katina's background, and then we'll get started. And I just noticed she has the Hamilton poster in the background there, which is pretty cool.
And I just noticed that I misspelled my own last name. Nazario only has one A.
That's okay. It made sure that I used the right vowel pronunciation.
You did, but it's only one A. I was typing too fast.
Very good. So Katina has served as the Latino Liaison since May of 2019. She was previously an appointee in the Obama administration, serving in the Office of the Secretary at the Department of Commerce. She also spent 10 years at Novartis, and prior to that worked at AstraZeneca. She holds a master's in law from University of Maryland, as well as a master's in public administration from Baruch College, as well as a Bachelor of Arts from City University of New York, Herbert Lehman College, and she is on the board of Emerge America. And before we dive into our conversation, just want to remind everyone that we are broadcasting live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We encourage you to join in the conversation and share your questions and comments in the chat box wherever you are watching us from. Make this available to your friends and networks and share that link. We would greatly appreciate it. Special shout out to Miss Vivian from Oxon Hill, who is here every week, and we see that you're here. Good afternoon, Miss Vivian. Thanks for being here again. The point of these conversations is always about just welcoming each other and into a space where we can talk about important things going on in the community. Today has a focus on the Hispanic and Latin community in the county in commemoration of Hispanic Heritage Month, which is celebrated from September 15th through October 15th each year. This is one of the really awesome and quirky heritage months in that it does not fall just within one calendar month, because we couldn't pack in all the great Latin energy into one month. We spread it out over two. And the special thing about September 15th is that there are a handful of countries in Latin America that celebrate their independence that day. So it gives a great festive start. And then Mexico celebrates theirs on the 16th, but they start partying at midnight from the 15th. So it's a whole good thing. The library offers a wide range of Hispanic Heritage Month programs, and we have amazing resources. We have a new portal for Spanish speakers for our website. If you go to pgcmls.info in the top left, you'll see Su Biblioteca, and you can click on that and you'll get access to all of the resources that we have to offer, from free tutoring for kids in English and Spanish online to thousands and thousands of books and things like that. So without further ado, we're going to switch into our conversation here with Katina. Katina, can you tell us what the functions and responsibilities are of the County Latino Liaison?
Well, first, the office of my office, our office, Latino Liaison, historically is a function of all administrations. So it existed in the previous administration, and obviously, so it's sort of, it's an office that is institutional, and that is important because that demonstrates the commitment to the community. So when our current county executive moves on to whatever her next professional career is, this office will still exist. So my office is under the Office of Stakeholder Engagement. And within the Office of Stakeholder Engagement, we also have a labor liaison, a municipal liaison, a faith-based liaison, and we have a sort of a part-time liaison. But my function, the function of this office of the Latino Liaison, is just that. What you think of inherent of a liaison is. So we have all of our agencies, of which the library and park systems are sort of quasi. They don't fall into our system the same way the Department of Finance or Law or DPI. But our office, and obviously it's taken on a new role and function as a result of COVID-19, but it is the external facing office to the Latino community in the county.
Awesome. Thank you for that intro. I've lived in Prince George's County for a while now, and I've come to realize how big our county is. It's enormous, not just from a population standpoint, but geographically, it's something like 64 times the size of the district, or 6 times, something like that. We have well over 900,000 residents, and that is growing by the day practically. Can you tell us a bit about the size and scope of the Latino community that is living in the county right now, and how that relates to the past and the future?
Well, historically, when you look at our county and you look at, let's say, the councilmanic map, so you look at it by county council members, historically, the bulk of our Latino population was populated within Councilwoman Taveras, Glaros, Ivy, and Denoga. And those council members represent everything from Laurel, Hyattsville, Langley Park, Bladensburg, and Riverdale. And that is still the case. However, the Latino community is growing. We are having babies and our families are getting larger. And as a result, it is no longer the case that if you wanted to partner or provide services to Latinos in Prince George's, you had to go to Hyattsville and Langley Park. While that is still the case, you will find lots of Latinos in District Heights, in Capitol Heights, in Oxon Hill, in Temple Hills, and in Laurel. So there isn't a jurisdiction in the county that doesn't have any Latinos. And another way is obviously through our partners in the Archdiocese, the Catholic churches. So whether it's the Catholic churches or our Pentecostal, so we have a Catholic church in Clinton, which historically didn't have a huge Latino population, but there are lots of Latinos in Clinton. And depending on what your ethnic background is, if you happen to be Puerto Rican, you know that in this country, wherever there's a strong military presence or military base, you will find lots of Puerto Ricans. And this is no different, that you will find lots of Puerto Ricans near Andrews Air Force. So we're all there.
Yeah. Awesome. And how does that compare to DC, Montgomery County, Northern Virginia?
I mean, I don't think it's very different. Where I think it's the same, where I think it's changed is that, you know, in Montgomery County, you thought maybe you would just go to Wheaton, you know, to provide services or partner with Latinos. That is not the case. You know, in Montgomery County, you're sure Wheaton, Silver Spring, but you can go all the way to Gaithersburg, Bethesda, Chevy Chase. The same with Northern Virginia. You know, historically, it was just Arlington and Alexandria, but there's a huge Latino population. I mean, I would say in this corridor of, you know, the tri-region, DC, Maryland, and Virginia, there is a huge Latino population. My counterpart in DC, Jackie Reyes, she has an entire office. There's a Latino liaison in Anne Arundel. There's a Latino liaison in Montgomery County. So yes, the governments have done a good job at meeting the demand of the population. And one way they're meeting that demand is by filling positions within, in our case, the county government, with people who share the same, you know, ethnic background or cultural background.
Great. Can you speak a bit about the way the county government as a whole is committed to and approaches equitable access to government functions, thinking about the language equity, for example?
So I always say, you know, we all have access to Whole Foods, but we all can't afford Whole Foods. So Whole Foods is open to the public. You can walk in at any time, but it doesn't mean you can afford everything. And when you look at language access from the lens of equity and racial equity, it's, how do you meet the needs of your population in their native language? So obviously, when we start at the top, in this case, the Office of the County Executive, I speak fluent Spanish and I read and write it. And we are very fortunate that in many of our agencies, we have bilingual staff to meet the needs of the Latino community, especially in those agencies that are external facing. In our Office of Human Relations Commission, HRC, there is a dedicated person that only works on language access. And some might say, well, why do you need a dedicated person? Because, not every Latino speaks Spanish. We have a large population of people from Guatemala who only speak Mum. And when you think of language access and the broader Black and Brown and diaspora, we have a huge African population, and we have a significant Vietnamese population. And while we are unable to always meet the needs of the community, in part because of our limited resources, we do try our best, and I think are fairly successful, that if someone in the community needed access to a government service or information in Spanish, they're going to receive it, even if it means that they are an agency and at that particular moment, no one speaks Spanish. They will get on the phone and they'll call me and I'll serve as a translator just to make sure. And we've done it. That has happened plenty of times. But it is often a challenge because our population is growing tremendously to meet that demand. But for the most part, I think we do a good job.
Cool. That's something that we are really focused on as well at the library, of course. We benefit from the infrastructure that you and everyone in the county government has established around, if you think about the last however many months this has been, 7 months of COVID and emergency operations, all of the county government's information has been accessible in English and Spanish, not by request, but at the base level, everything being put out is equally accessible in English and Spanish.
No, and that was a strategic, it wasn't strategic in that we had to give it a lot of thought. So our director of communications, Gina Ford, and our PIO, Anthony McAuliffe, who is a fluent Spanish speaker, when they triggered the JIC, the Joint Information Center, I was detailed to the JIC. And then my colleague, Angel Perez Irizarry, who works in the Office of Community Relations and is a native Spanish speaker, he was detailed to the JIC also, because we understood that so much information was going to come out at such a quick pace around COVID-19. And we had to have a mechanism where everything that was put out in English was quickly put out in Spanish as well. And we've been recognized for that effort because we've been very good at making sure that everything that goes out in English also goes out in Spanish. And that's really the function of our comms team that has done a great job.
Awesome. One of the things that folks who don't necessarily participate in this work might not realize is that there is so much diversity within the Spanish language. And that's not even getting into the indigenous language, as you mentioned with Mom. Here at the library, when we approach the language access, we try and go with the vocabulary and the phrasings that will resonate with the most number of individuals in the community. So for us, that is usually defaulting to Central American vocabulary and phrases and such. What is your vision for that in terms of making sure that you use the terminology that will reach as many people without alienating folks who have different dialects?
So I think for the most part, our comms team, and it helps that our PIO, Anthony, speaks fluent Spanish because we have this conversation a lot. So the funniest example is a translation of Prince Georgians. So my ethnicity is Puerto Rican. Informally, that would just be estimados residentes or queridos residentes. That sort of seems to be the most neutral middle of the road. But depending on where you're from, the literal translation is Príncipe Georgianos. But that would just be too formal. And people would be like, what are you talking about? Just bring it down to, what President Obama used to say, plain English, please. So whereas you default to a dialect of Central America, Ours is just plain English. So we obviously stay away from what can be perceived as ethnic jargon, and we don't use Google Translate. I have to put that out there. We do not use Google Translate. So we do have a very strong translation process that goes through several tests before something goes out. And up to this point, in the year and a half that I have been here, I can only speak for myself. I've never gotten a comment where, well, one time, I'm sorry. In Puerto Rico, you can use abogado or licenciado interchangeably for lawyer. Mm-hmm. And even informally, I will use licenciado. So someone said to me, well, it's best if you use abogado. But, you know, it was something small like that. But for the most part, our comms team has never gotten feedback that someone or a person felt like we were favoring a region of Latin America or the Caribbean versus another.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic that that we all think about in the kind of work of making things accessible, but folks in the public might not realize, which is just an interesting quirk of the job. So thinking about the community, the Latin community pre-COVID, can you tell us a bit about some of the kind of unique strengths of the Latin community locally, and also the challenges that the community was facing, thinking just pre-COVID?
I mean, understanding that we're not monolithic, just the same way not every person is the same. And there's a very big difference between the culture of Latinos in the Caribbean and the culture of Latinos in Latin America, and the cultures of Latinos whose ethnicity is Puerto Rican and by default they're American versus those that are immigrant. So those are some important distinctions. But pre-COVID, we all know that pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, we are the essential workers. We are the essential workers. We are the ones that make sure that your meal is, all of the ingredients are harvested and picked and freshly prepared, and that salad and that chicken that you are eating at Sardi's, more likely than not, that supply chain was Latino. We are the ones that are doing all of your landscaping. We are the ones that are cleaning your homes, because that is what we do. Now, I also understand that, unfortunately, many of our Latino residents come from countries where there was horrific civil wars or gang violence, and they come here with a level of trauma that, unfortunately, I don't understand, because, I'm Puerto Rican, so I'm American, but I am sensitive to that. And as a result, they come here with an incredible work ethic, but oftentimes don't understand the way local government works because they left a corrupt system. Not all the time, but sometimes. And that pre-COVID, it's often difficult to communicate to a vulnerable community in a new country. They don't speak the language and may be experiencing PSTD, why it's important to complete the census, because we were promoting the census before COVID. And it's often difficult to make the correlation that you already trust government, and you don't have, and you know that the government is going to keep your information private. How do I know that? Because you have a driver's license, and you needed, when you were approved to get a driver's license, you had to give lots of personal information. You have a smartphone and you order goods and services on your smartphone, which means you have to put your credit card info in. Your children are in school, which means you had to disclose a lot of information about you to our school system. And if you need healthcare, you're going to receive healthcare in the county. So you do trust the government, or conversely, maybe you're a little fearful of the government, but you do trust the government. And pre-COVID, it was a challenge to make that correlation. During COVID, it's worse, because this current administration, their attempts to instill fear in our community especially around the lack of resources that we received from the federal government for COVID. We were very successful in very quickly activating and implementing services and programs, specifically testing for Latinos. But I don't think most people realize that, our testing centers, all of what they saw and what they continue to see is money from the federal government. So it has been a challenge communicating to all of our international and immigrant residents that they should get tested. So pre-COVID, it was more, listen, you should fill out the census, you trust government, and this is why. During COVID, it's been difficult because of the rhetoric coming from the White House that was very divisive and hurtful to our community.
Thank you. Following up with a question from Ms. Vivian that's related to what we were just talking about. What are the kind of most important services and relief efforts that you've been involved in that have been not necessarily just targeting the Latin community, but been in your focus in terms of the urgent needs in different neighborhoods? And is that food? Is that medical supplies? Is that internet access? Is that health access?
So it's the pre-COVID and COVID question. Obviously, pre-COVID, from my vantage point, the broad needs, Black and Brown, so all the county residents. Pre-COVID, obviously, we had a food insecurity problem. So that was everybody. Specifically to our international and immigrant, pre-COVID, the issues were around immigration. But I think the challenge is that most folks don't realize that immigration is a federal issue. So if you're legally, like if you're a permanent resident and you meet the criteria to apply for citizenship, that has nothing to do with us. That's the federal government. But oftentimes, whether it's a U visa, whether it's paying taxes, we end up in cases because they are our residents. Access to broadband and Wi-Fi, I think that there isn't a jurisdiction in this country that couldn't use, that isn't in need of greater Wi-Fi access, prior to COVID. Now, during COVID, obviously, the immediate issue was access to testing. If you tested positive, how were you going to quarantine, and food? So I would say those were the three immediate, and that had nothing to do with being Latino. We wanted to make sure that everybody in the county had access to testing whenever possible, if they can quarantine, and access to food. But what's unique about our international and immigrant is that our international and immigrant community, who happens to be undocumented, they don't qualify for state or federal services. So they don't qualify for unemployment. They don't qualify for Medicaid. They don't qualify for food stamps. They don't qualify for rental relief. So it created additional pressure for all of us in the administration and how to ensure that our undocumented population received services, goods and services, because they weren't eligible to receive like
I'm having a little connection issue on my end, I think, but I think you wrapped that question, right?
Yes, I did.
Great. I didn't want to interrupt. So just on a couple of those notes, specific, let's just the digital divide, for example. If you look at the last round of census data, over 30% of Prince George's County households do not have home broadband internet, which when you think about what we're dealing with now, that's a huge challenge and a huge access gap that we've been collectively as a community doing a lot to address, but it's been very much a Band-Aid on like a gushing wound. And for example, the public school systems, just like the library has drive-up Wi-Fi available at all buildings, with the schools, you have to have a link card number if you're a staff or a family of a school child. At the library, you have to have a library card number, and it's open to anyone who's got that.
Yep.
The school system has made hotspots available through public-private partnerships to the households. But if you think about a household with multiple kids in it, plus the parent trying to telework, if they're even fortunate enough to telework, a hotspot's not going to serve needs. The library has hotspots as well, but it's, and while we've added several hundred more, it's never going to be enough to meet the needs. So one of the things that's pretty cool that we're doing at the library, which is a partnership with the Housing Authority with the county, is we are starting to pilot putting IT equipment into apartment buildings and apartment complexes that are supported by the library's IT team. And then actually we get support from teenagers who are doing work study programs, learning their trade, and they're helping us support these terminals where people can get online and do other things like that. And we're really grateful for the partnership with the Housing Authority. And for us to collectively have a significant impact on this issue, it's going to take scaling up programs like that so that it's accessible everywhere. And wouldn't it be amazing if there was a day where all housing that was supported by the local or national government came with broadband internet as just a fundamental human right, so that we can all reach our potential. So someday we'll get there. It's an important goal, and I know there's a lot of mobilization around this right now in the county. Another question from Ms. Vivian, which is a nice question, is do you like what you do?
I do, but before I answer Ms. Vivian's questions regarding sort of broadband technology, you know, it really depends if you're urban or rural. And then it depends on the sort of, you know, what kind of package you have. Because I think people sometimes, you can buy cable, you can pay for cable for your television, but that's very different from Wi-Fi and broadband access. And it is very expensive. It is super, super expensive. So we have a couple of nonprofits, and the Office of the County Executive has a Latino Advisory Board, which, full disclosure, Nick is a member. And we have had some folks who have wanted to donate to pay for broadband for X amount of families for X amount of time. And I passed that person along to a nonprofit that could liaise that, because it really is a fundamental right, and it's how you democratize information and access to information. So I just wanted to, and it's something that we care, you know, very deeply. So yes, Ms. Vivian, I enjoy my job. I have had a pretty solid trajectory in terms of my professional work experience, and it's all sort of been around the same focus area of external engagement, advocacy. You know, there is advocacy and sales, you could say, are sort of cousins or related, but I believe that the government plays a critical role in our day-to-day and at every level. So if your garbage isn't picked up in 4 days, and it's the summertime, and in those 4 days you had to discard some chicken or discard some scrambled eggs that you didn't eat completely, and your garbage hasn't been picked up in 4 days, you're really going to see how municipal government impacts your life. At the state level, the state of Maryland, they administer all of our unemployment. So if unfortunately or sadly you were let go because of COVID, unemployment is through the state. And to the previous question about internet access and broadband, that is the FCC, which is federal. So I enjoy what I do because I understand how, you know, in this case, local, state, and federal impacts everything that we do, from taxes to infrastructure to healthcare. And really, even, I don't think most people realize, rule of law. You know, rule of law is a function of government. When you leave your house every day, red, green, or yellow, that light is going to tell you what to do. That stop sign is telling you what to do. Those are all functions of.
Thank you. I know in a lot of the relief efforts that you've been involved with leading during COVID, public-private partnerships have been central to that even being a possibility. Can you talk about examples of these really strong partnerships like World Central Kitchen, working with the county nonprofits like La Clinica and others?
Yeah, so codifying relationships, I think it's critical to any municipal government. And obviously, every local government is really struggling right now as a result of the loss of revenue due to taxes. And even though we are a local government, you can codify national partnerships. And I say that because even though we're in Prince George's County, there might be a private family foundation in Seattle. There might be a philanthropic organization in Denver or in New York or in Boston who is willing to help. So World Central Kitchen, I reached out to them in March. I didn't really have an early grasp of the crisis we were going to have with food, but I suspected it, and only because I saw what happened in Puerto Rico during Hurricane Maria. That was very different. The entire island was just shut down. No water, no light. And I found it fascinating that Chef Jose Andres was able to activate and provide hot meals. Unlike COVID, the supermarkets never closed down, and you might not have had money, but we all had access to food. So I reached out to them in March and basically laid out what I thought was about to happen. And they also recognized, because they had already been working in New York, and they had seen what happened in New York in terms of the lack of food availability. And it was just a very natural partnership. And we are so grateful because they activated their first food distribution site in April in Mount Rainier. And they stood with us until September 24th. So it was an incredible, incredible partnership that we will be forever grateful for, because they provided over 150,000 meals to the county.
Wow.
Just Langley Park and Hyattsville. They were in Upper Marlboro. They were in Cottage City. They were in Fort Washington. They were in Temple Hills. They were in District Heights, in Greenbelt, College Park. I mean, they really did an incredible job, and we're so grateful for them. But yes, public-private partnerships are critical. And when you look at our nonprofit partners in healthcare, La Clinica and Mary, they will not turn anyone away, independent of immigration or the ability to pay, but they need resources and they need help. And if people don't realize it, our outcome of the census will also dictate how much money they get.
Thank you. It's a perfect segue to census, which merits a lot of airtime, especially now that it's been extended to October 31st, and who knows where we'll go from that date, since it changes every week at the moment. So tell us why the census is an important thing for people to do, just in terms of civic duty, but also because of the very immediate and direct impact on their lives locally.
So I think the easiest way to explain it is that every government needs to know and has a right to know how many people in their jurisdiction. It's not a partisan issue. A government cannot provide goods, services, and programs if they don't know how many people are in their jurisdiction. I mean, it's a very, very fundamental need of a government. Now, it's a constitutional requirement. It's not that this administration said we have to do it or the previous administration. It's written into the Constitution, and it happens every 10 years. It's through the Department of Commerce, which is the agency I used to work at when I served in the Obama administration. And basically, it dictates everything from congressional seats. And here's a tidbit that I don't think many people realize. If you live in a densely populated urban area, like you live on one of those streets with the row homes in Baltimore, or you live in New York City, and there is no Costco or supermarket nearby, you have a corner store or bodega. There's a reason why in those corner stores or bodegas, you're not going to see the same things you see at Costco, because they know that there's no space in the house. And that if you live in a studio apartment, why would you need a roll of toilet paper that has 22 rolls? Because the Census Bureau knows what the needs are of that jurisdiction. Now, in Prince George's County, where some, not all, may live in a townhouse or detached house with a lot of space, and they have resources, Costco and the buyers at the granular level know that there's a demand here for big box items that you probably wouldn't get in Baltimore or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. But all of that is census data. When new businesses want to come to your jurisdiction, that is census data. When the pre-K in your jurisdiction is created or taken away, that's the census. If you wanted to start a business right now and wanted to know more about where you wanted to start your business, you go to the census, because the census is going to tell you how many people, how old, their ethnicity, if one is married to the other, if the woman has 4 children, if the man has 2 biological and 2 adopted. They don't care about your religion or sexual orientation or your immigration status. All the federal government cares about is how many people are in the house. So if you rent an apartment, if you rent a basement and you're undocumented and 17 people live in the basement, so what? Put them all down. And if you're pregnant, as long as the baby, well, now with the date change, I don't know. But depending, I have to look at the update. But if you're pregnant within a time frame, you would also count the baby in your belly, because that baby is going to need services in the next 10 years. So it is critical. And it is also, unlike voting, it is the most civic act that you can implore where citizenship isn't required. That is not the case with voting. With voting, you have to be a registered voter, which means that you have to meet the criteria. For the census, that's not the case. And we've been very, very fortunate that we have held Latino census events throughout the county. And we have met with lots of Latinos. I don't know their immigration status because it's irrelevant. And they're not reticent at all. They will gladly fill it out, but it takes that personal connection from someone who looks like them or at least speaks the same language. So it is critical. You have to fill out the census. Don't be afraid. You can do it online, over the phone, or at an event, if there's an event, near you.
Great. And there are options for you to complete the census in many different languages, including Spanish. We have a link up on the screen now, my2020census.gov. If you go there, there's a language menu option. You can complete it online. You could have done it by mail and can continue to do that. There are enumerators going around knocking on doors now with all appropriate PPE and such to keep everyone safe. And you can also call the Census Bureau. There's a number at that link, and I'll try and plug it into the chat before we wrap today. The other thing is, what is the role of the library in this? The library is one of the most trusted organizations in a community. We have public libraries throughout the country, and we have 19 branches here in Prince George's County. And while we have reduced operations right now because of COVID, we are maintaining and expanding our services almost by the week in order to make sure that we get access back to everything from mobile printing to 3D printing and everything else. If you want to talk to someone who knows the local community to ask advice on, okay, I'm concerned about this thing with the census, or I'm unclear on where to go to vote, you can just call the library. And we're here to make sure that we either give you the resource directly or that we tell you where to go. And you know that when you come to us, it is a nonpartisan source of information. We are not about trying to give you answers or persuade you. We're just about giving you resources. And if you come to us and say, hey, I live in Bowie and we need some more help with food distributions, can you connect us with someone in the city of Bowie and with the Latino Liaison? Well, within 5 minutes, you're going to have an email to Katina and also Mati, who works for the city of Bowie, and they're magically going to make something happen for you, because that is the amazing commitment and public servants that we have here in Prince George's County, where our local officials are accessible to everyone. They are part of the community, and it's not like some massive city where everyone is far removed. Like, we are your neighbors. And I hear my neighbors is, I'm having trouble with my library account. What can I do to fix it? And let's figure it out. That's what we're here for. We're here to help each other because we all live together and want to see each other and also our community thrive. One of the things that came up recently, the county executive has the Forward Task Force for recovering from COVID. Can you talk about the way some of the relief efforts and the important things that you're working on behalf of the Latino Liaison's office are reflected or connect to the recommendations from that task force?
Well, the Forward Task Force has 5 committees, and they just released their first set of recommendations. And I'm often asked about what are the needs of the Latino community. So we have to put aside immigration, because comprehensive immigration reform, it's just, it's federal, and you just can't go to your local congressperson and ask. This is years of big policy issues. But the needs of the Latino community are the same as our African American residents, our white residents, our Catholic, our Jewish. We want access to good schools. We want access to healthcare. We want to be safe. So the needs are the same. How we communicate may be a little different. So the recommendations from the Forward Task Force, as it applies to the Latino community, because right now, the feedback that I receive from the Latino community is still around COVID testing. So while the COVID test is free through our Department of Health, you don't need to have any symptoms. You don't need an appointment. You don't need ID. You literally drive up. They are going to ask you some questions. And then you go to a second area for the nasal swab. And then if you create an online account, you can get your results very quickly, or the Department of Health will send them to you. And I know this because I got tested through the Department of Health, and it was a very seamless process. But the Forward Task Force, what their ultimate recommendations are going to be, not only will they help and serve Latinos, but it will be countywide around economic development. So jobs are critical, and healthcare, especially for those who have tested positive from COVID, but also the true sort of services that municipal government functions around healthcare, maternal health, access to immunizations. Flu season is coming up. What does that mean for our community, especially our vulnerable international immigrant community? So we are working very closely with the Department of Health to amplify the messaging of flu shots and immunizations. Talk to your pediatrician. If you don't have a pediatrician, we will find a way to get you linked up or connected to whatever you need that's within the purview of the county executive. And if it's not, we'll find out. We'll definitely make a call on your behalf. That case management, we do it all the time. At least I do.
Great. We just want to encourage folks, if you're tuning in, please let us know your questions or comments. We will be covering Q&A for a few minutes here. I just want to plug a few of the library's resources that are super important. We want to make sure that folks know about them. So the library continues in phase 1 of its own reopening, which is curbside service. And while it seems like we're limited because the buildings are not open yet to the public, we do have a lot of the same services available. So you can check out physical materials, whether that's books, movies, or mobile hotspots, where you can get free internet at home for 9 weeks as a family, and completely free, and you can keep checking them out. We also have 3D printing that is available, which you would submit those print jobs in, whether you're a student or whether you're an entrepreneur who wants to access the technology. Mobile printing, which is if you, right now we're offering 10 free pages per visit. You would send in your documents to the library ahead of time, whether that if you're looking at tax documents or job applications, resumes, whatever you need, doesn't matter. Your privacy is 100% protected, but it's a great savings, so you don't have to go over to FedEx or anything like that. Just come to the library and we're here to help with that. We also have great things going on with virtual programs that we encourage you to check out. We have a weekly Spanish language community conversation, just like this one that our colleague Vilma hosts. It's called Café a las Cuatro. It meets on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We have a program called Kids Achieve Club, which is a special program for English language learners. So if English is not your native language or if it's your second language, you can get homework support. And we're doing that virtually this fall for first and second graders. All PGCPS students have automatic access to all of the library's resources with their link card number. All you need to do is put the letters PGCPS in front of your link card number, and then you'll be able to access all of our great resources online. A couple other random things that I think are cool. We offer free access to the Washington Post, New York Times, and 27 major magazines, including People en Español. So when you need to catch up on gossip, but you want to do it in Spanish, we've got that for you. It's a great thing.
Right. Quick question. How does that work? You have an online account, or you have a physical, like your card, and you want to sign up for, the free New York Times or Washington Post. Is there a special link for that? Because I have gotten questions about that.
Yeah, so I can actually walk you all through it here on screen.
Yeah, and I'm going to take some notes while you do that.
So,
actually, I'm going to open up my other screen and do it with you.
Very good. See, we work as a team. Okay, so here we are on screen. The first thing to do is go to pgcmls.info, which is our homepage. pgcmls.info.
Got it.
Here at the top, there's a menu. As I mentioned before, if you want to access everything in Spanish, click on Su Biblioteca up in the top left. But otherwise, I'm just going to show you the easiest way to get to the news resources right now. So if you go into Online Library, there are two ways to go. I'll show you both ways. The first way is you go Online Library, then over to Support Suite. And in Support Suite, we have some curated online resources, creative, digital, discovery, etc. I'm going to go right to news. Okay. And then here you will see.
Suite.
Yep.
Okay.
So here you see
Read
Washington
now.
Post, New York Times, and Flipster. And each of these platforms has slightly different procedures because they might be different vendors or there are different conditions of access. So these three platforms are new to the library since the beginning of the pandemic. We wanted to make sure that folks had the same access to the news that they had when the branches were open.
But Nick, I just did it, and it's giving me the code to hit redeem. Yeah. And when I click on redeem, which is actually quite easy, so I get to the landing page for the New York Times. Got it. So this sign-up process that you see for the Washington Post, is it the library info or your info?
So it's when you get to this page with the Washington Post, if you don't have a Washington Post account, an online account for free access or whatever, you'll need to create one as part of this process. And then you put that coupon code basically against your Washington Post account. So
that's great.
And then similar for the New York Times, you get to this page for the New York Times access. There's a code that you redeem against your own New York Times online account. The one little hurdle with this is that each platform makes you go through this authentication process every few days because of the discounted nature of it, and they're trying to protect their income source a little bit. So Washington Post, each time you go through the authentication, it gives you 7 days. And you just need to create an account once on the Washington Post or New York Times, and then you can always come back to our website when you have to re-authenticate.
Look, it's free. So if you have to go through, an extra step here or there, who cares?
Exactly. And for example, I used to pay for my own digital subscription for these, and now I don't need to anymore but I'm still paying as a taxpayer, right? So that's supporting this. But if you think about like the Washington Post digital nowadays, the subscriptions for these are hundreds of dollars a year.
Oh, and you only get three free articles a month, which you can blow through in a minute.
Exactly. And so this is a great service. And this is one of the examples of how the library has changed a lot in the COVID times, because we've been seeking opportunities to make sure that we have the same or increased access to everything that we do virtually. So now, before you had to do Washington Post only within a branch, or you would use one of our physical copies within the branch. And now any county resident can access the Washington Post, New York Times, 100% free, anywhere in the world, no cost, no paywall.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. The other thing, while we're covering the website, just since we're here, I wanted to just make sure everyone knows how to get a virtual library card.
I have a virtual one.
Yes, very good. And the cool thing about our library is that you can actually live outside of the county and get access to certain resources. So if you live in DC and work in Prince George's County, this is your library too. We don't care. We're here to serve the community at large. So on our homepage, pgcmls.info, you would go to the services in the menu. And then over on the left side, there's a link that says library card services. And this is where you go to do everything from renewing your card online to getting a new virtual card. And you can see here we have it in Spanish and English. So register for a virtual library card. You go through your prompts here. Loading. And you'll go through the steps to get that virtual library card. It is super easy to do. If you are ever having trouble with your accounts, there are a number of ways to get in touch with us. You can send me a tweet or Instagram at 2 in the morning, which I've helped some state legislators do that, get their accounts squared away. You can send us an email at askalibrarian@pgcmls.info, and you can also call us at 240-455-5451. I'll type that into the chat. Again, it's 240-455-5451. And you can get help in English or Spanish or a number of other languages where we have on-demand interpretation services. So the library is here for you. And last call for questions. Otherwise, I'm going to keep yapping away, which nobody is super excited about. Just in closing here, Katina, and this will be a very library question. What are some of the books and authors or poets or creators who have inspired your commitment to service?
Well, I think if some of you haven't read, I implore you to read Justice Sonia Sotomayor's book, because it is, when we don't see each other in leadership positions, for example, and when we don't see each other, and when one finally gets there, it's almost like we're so happy and even mesmerized, like, how did you get there? Because the path seems so foreign. And I remember when I worked in the Obama administration, First Lady Michelle Obama hired a communications director, and I was already serving in the administration. And at the time, there were Latinos, and I think there was one Puerto Rican, but the White House is a very big, the White House is big, lots of agencies. The First Lady's office is very different from the president's office. So there's their offices and then all the other functions of the White House. So it was announced that the First Lady hired a woman by the name of Maria Cristina Noguera Irizarry. And I found out she was Puerto Rican. And for me, it was like, what? A Puerto Rican in the White House? I shouldn't have had that response. But I was so excited, and we're very close friends till this day. And when I finally met her, I said, how'd you get the job? Which is really an unfortunate question for me to ask her. But because I never saw myself, we don't see ourselves. When one gets there, we think it's like this foreign entity, like UFO type, like, how did you get there? So I definitely think that, either glance through or skim through Justice Sotomayor's book. It is an incredible, incredible book. Then there are the books by Isabel Allende. And then, there are also books by non-Latinos. So I remember when I was in college, I took a class in the Harlem Renaissance, and I read a book by Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God. I was deeply, deeply, deeply moved by that. The way the book was structured and the language, to me, I couldn't understand it. And then look, obviously anyone it doesn't matter if you went to a public school or a private school, Lord of the Flies. I'm hoping and praying that my kids, I can't get them to sit down and read. And I ask them every day, what are you reading? What are you reading? To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm desperately trying to get my kids to read To Kill a Mockingbird. But what I'll do, I'm going to take my camera so that you can see my bookshelf. I'm going to hope that you can see the other junk in my office. So I'm going to start. So this is the top of my bookshelf. So I have Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs, so forth and so on. Then when you go down to the second one, yeah, I have Hillary Clinton, Hamilton, Jay-Z, The Audacity of Hope. And this one's a little messy, but this one is The Boundaries of Her Body, The State of Affairs, 5-Day Memorial. And this classic right here, which is like an original, this is The Native Son by Richard Wright. And it's so old, but I keep it here because you can't find a copy like this anymore. And down here we have, so yes, I try my best to read as much as possible, but the ongoing joke is during COVID, I haven't lost 1 pound or read one book. I'm trying.
Oh, no. Well, you've been busy like saving lives, so it's all good.
Yeah, no, I haven't lost 1 pound or read one book. But you know, it's such a critical, depending on who you ask. So you'll talk to a dean at a school and you may ask the dean, what should I major in? And a dean might say, major in what you like and major in what you're going to get an A. So for me, in terms of reading, I don't judge on what you want to read. If all you want to do is read about cars or travel or mechanics or, you know, the government system in the UK, gossip, whatever it is, just read. Because I think what's critical is the fact that right now there is no critical thought in many sectors, and a soundbite is not news. A soundbite is not information. You shouldn't be getting information on social media, especially if you're trying to persuade or convince. The ability to sit and read a book is critical. And if you're in school now, yeah, many of your classes will be online, but many classes you will still be required to read a book. So, and then as adults, you know, whether it's a Kindle or on your phone or whatever, I think the ability to read is really the only way that we learn and grow, and it's democratized. Anyone has access to it. So that's sort of my closing thought on the importance of reading and books.
A+ from the library. We love it. We make that a whole PSA, and the bookshelf tour was awesome. Just a couple things related to all that. One of the things that the folks might not know is that the library offers graphic novels and comic books, and we have them both in physical copies and also an amazing online resource called Comics Plus, where you can read comic books and graphic novels on your mobile phone, on your iPad, on your computer, whatever you want. And it's everything from like Superman to John Lewis's March series, which is really amazing. And there was unlimited access for that for a while this summer. We also have, for the Spanish speakers, we've been growing our ebook collection in Spanish, adding hundreds and hundreds of Spanish language children's ebooks. We also have a really cool new platform, which is a Colombian pronunciation of two English, or an English word. They call it make make, and it's make in English. It's a publisher in Colombia that publishes Latin American children's authors. And so this is, you know, you might be a family that just arrived here, or you want to teach your kids books that are actually written by authors in Spanish, not just translations of English books. And we now have that available for you in the comfort of your home, which is pretty cool, and want folks to check that out. One last question from Ms. Vivian, and you don't have to answer it super fully. It's up to you, and then we'll let you go back to your important work. And that is, what did you think of First Lady Michelle Obama, who of course is an author, so we can talk about her.
I have her book. I don't know. It's somewhere. I mean, I think she's extraordinary. I met her once. I mean, she's extraordinary. I think that, and I've met people, I know people who've worked with her. It doesn't mean that they know her personally, because there's working with her, but that's very different. No, I think she's for I think she's very impressive. And interesting tidbit, which I will answer. So this was about 1.5 years ago. I hadn't joined the Also Brooks administration. And I'm a huge fan of Soul Cycle, even though Soul Cycle is closed down. And I live in Prince George's, but I schlep all the way to DC. So I'm in Soul Cycle and I walk in and I see Secret Service. And I was just like, I wonder if the Secret Service is here. And I apologize because, not many people may know what Soul Cycle is, but it's indoor cycling and the studio is dark. It's not like when you go to Gold's Gym or your local gym where the cycling studio has a lot of lights. This is completely dark. And I'm like, I wonder why the Secret Service is here. So I go up and say, I know you're the Secret Service, who's here? He's like, well, we can't say. I said, okay, I respected whoever's privacy. So I go into the studio, I sit on my bike, and then the class is about to start and the class is full, but there's like an empty bike in the middle and she walks in. It's like the scene started. She had a cap on, and she sat down, and then probably like an assistant or something, and she started riding her bike, and everyone was very respectful. The instructor zoned in on her and said hello to her. So yeah, I had met her once before at the White House, but I can now say that I worked out with the First Lady.
Amazing.
No, she's extraordinary.
Definitely. Thank you for that question, Ms. Vivian. We encourage everyone, if you're interested in reading the First Lady's book, Becoming, it's available through the library, ebook, audiobook, physical book, whatever you need. It's also a documentary that you can access online outside of the library.
Which, by the way, the First Lady's, her Netflix series, that was directed by a Puerto Rican woman.
Oh.
And was nominated for an Emmy. Interesting tidbit there.
Yeah, I think she's either been nominated or won Grammys too, and
correct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So pretty cool, multi-talented. Well, Katina, this has been really fabulous. We appreciate your time and all of your work that you are doing 24/7 for the community. How can folks keep in touch with you and your office through social media?
So obviously they can, if they have a question, they can go to you, or they can. The county executive, Angela Also Brooks on her Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then there's our office. So I get a lot of questions on Facebook. Why are you PG Latino versus Prince George's County Latino? And that's a Facebook. If somebody can figure out a way to help me change it from PG Latino to Prince George's County Latino, I haven't been able to figure it out. On Instagram, it's Prince George's County Latino. And then Twitter, it's something like
County George's.
Yes, County George's, because the names aren't available. But yes, I'm very accessible. You can email me, you can send me a private message. And if you're having an issue with garbage, if you're having an issue with one of our agencies, if you want information about COVID testing, whatever you need, feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Katina. Keep up the great work and let us know if we can do anything for you at the library. And we'll see everyone back next week, Thursday at 4 o'clock. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone.